Thank you guys for joining me here on the last segment of today's show. And for today's last segment, I thought I'd bring up a topic of discussion that I saw last week ahead of the Vikings and Lions game. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he has his own podcast and everything like that. He brought up the idea that, obviously the Vikings or the Lions, one of them was going to end up playing on the road and being a 14-win team. To be on the road the entire playoffs was something that didn't sit right with him, right? And we now know, obviously, that the Lions won the game and got the number one seed, and the Vikings lost, and now they're going to have the fifth seed and have to play all their games on the road in a season that is arguably one of the best, if not the best, in their franchise's history. They set a mark like that, and they don't really, get a reward for that, unfortunately, because of how the playoffs are set right now in the NFL. And the idea of two 4-2 teams, facing off with everything on the line, but only one of them would have to play on the road the entire postseason, despite, a fantastic record, was something that, again, like I said before, wasn't sitting well with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I thought the comments that he made were pretty interesting, knowing what we know now, and how, not that it's going to change the playoffs or anything like that, but it does open up a topic of conversation that you could really get involved in, if you really think about really making changes to the playoffs and things like that. But this is what Amon-Ra had to say last week, ahead of their game against the Vikings. He said on the playoff seedings, he said, "It's crazy. I think the rules should be changed. Obviously, if you win the division, you should obviously make a playoff spot. But having a 14-win team having to go on the road is kind of crazy, but I guess I don't make the rules. Hopefully, we can get a win and get home field advantage, but whatever happens, we both have a spot in the playoffs, so we might see each other after this game." And St. Brown also made the point about how a break, like we know the Lions have now because of that bye week, would help them because of all the injuries that they have, to Alexander Zaloni coming back, and we saw how huge that was, obviously. And with a bye week, I'm sure David Montgomery is going to play in the divisional round now, knowing that he has a week off, along with the rest of the team and anybody else that could be potentially on the brink of coming back, right? I mean, guys like Malcolm Rodriguez, like Barnes, those guys I don't think have a short-term injury to come back from, but, really David Montgomery's the biggest one that could return for them for the majority of the playoffs, and if they get to the Super Bowl, maybe we could see Aiden Hutchinson again, right? But that's still a long ways away. But St. Brown also wanted to reassure that he had confidence in the Lions as a team to go on the road and win, considering the fact that they're undefeated on the road as well. But now, knowing what we do, obviously, they're not going to have to go on the road. All their games are going to be at home, which is fine by them, I'm sure. So I thought the idea of him bringing up the changing to the playoffs, it was a little bit interesting, because first I wanted to agree with him, because having a 14-win team on the road, for you to go the entire year, especially now that the season's longer, it's more wear and tear on your body and things like that, for you to get 14 wins is nowhere near like just a little thing that you did, right? That's a huge, huge accomplishment. So because of all that hard work and everything like that, you feel like you've earned the right to have like more come your way over some other teams that maybe are 10 wins, 11, 9 wins or something like that, right? You feel like entitled to more of a reward for having the season that you did, especially over, division winners that, like I said, might have 9 wins, might have 10 wins or something like that. You feel like you deserve more than maybe those teams have, right? But based on how the division is set up right now, I think really changing it to what I think, Amon-Ra's kind of alluding to, is just the best records get buys, or the best records kind of have more of a home field advantage than teams with just worse records, kind of bypassing the divisions and everything like that. I think doing something like that would be going a bit too far, because then we get into this rabbit hole of like endless possibilities that you could enter when talking about the playoffs and how everything's seeded and things like that and who plays who, right? You can get into talking about how is it just the best four records, get home field advantage, or maybe you extend that to a fifth team getting, one home playoff game, and maybe you have two wild card teams instead of three. But then if you do that, right, do you do like, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown said one of the things that he wants to keep is that all division winners you get a home game, right? They should have an automatic spot. But if you keep it like that and still want to go along the route that the best records should get rewarded, then you could go, like I said, to maybe five teams get a home playoff game, and maybe only you have two wild card teams to still keep it at seven. That could be something you do, right? If you change to also the best four records, right? If we completely negate the divisions and just say, you know what, the best four records in the conference get the top four highest seeds, right? If you don't want to do five and two wild card teams, if you just want to keep it a four and three wild card teams, and just say the best four records get a home playoff game, then I feel like the significance of the division goes away, almost like the NBA. I really couldn't tell you who's in each division in the NBA, right? I don't know who's in the Celtics division. I don't know who's in the Warriors division. I know they have divisions, but it doesn't really matter because it's all just based on the best records in the conference, right? Nobody really pays too much attention to that, right? If you just won the division, it's just like, all right, like, great. Like, you just still need a better record than some of these other teams to have a better seeding in the playoffs, right? And I don't think that's something the NFL really wants to explore so much, right? Like, even into college football a little bit, where a big problem in college football, just kind of like as a side note here, is the conference winners and how much value goes into that right now with the 12-team playoffs, right? Do you really benefit from a bye week if you win your conference? And if some people think that you don't, then they take value away from winning the conference championship, and that's something you don't want to do at all. Obviously, right? If you're college football, you want there to be value in winning the Big Ten and winning the Big 12, winning the SEC, right? You want to feel like that means something, and I think the same goes for the divisions here. You still want to make it seem like it's important, right? And with that comes like the rivalries that everybody wants to see, right? The rivalries with the Steelers and the Ravens, the Eagles and the Cowboys, the Packers and the Bears, the Lions and the Bears, and things like that. You want that to have value, right? But if you take this idea, right, then maybe the top four records get the home playoff games, right? Because, they've earned it. They're a 14-win team, a 13-win team, right? They should have a home playoff game over a division winner that might have 10 wins, right? But because their division's bad, they get a higher seed, and that might not seem fair to some people. So you might say that, all right, if the top four records just get the home playoff game, then in order for that to be accurate, you can't play like these home and away games against certain teams. You might say that they can still play, right? But playing those teams twice in a system where you want the best four teams to have the best four seeds, you can't play the same three teams twice and have it kind of like you did with the divisions and kind of like you do now with the four best records getting the best four seeds, because it's not accurate at that point, right? If you're going to have the four best teams have the four highest seeds, you're going to have to spread it out a little bit more. You can't play home and away against the same three teams. And if you do that and really go into that route, you take away from the rivalries, right? You're not going to get the Ravens playing in Pittsburgh and then knowing later that you're going to have to go into Baltimore if you're the Steelers, right? And playing those teams twice, where you kind of lose a little bit of that nostalgia and, for old time, football fans, right? I think that's something that never wants to be changed, right? So that's what would come with an idea that, the best four records would have to play a much larger field of games, because if you don't, then you don't really know who's the top four teams if you play three teams home and away just to kind of keep that same divisional feeling, right? If you know what I mean. So you got 17 games right now, so you can't have, 6 of them being against the same three teams, right? That's also something that has to be taken into account. So I think there's a lot of things that could be changing. There's a lot of things already changing with the amount of games and the international games and things like that. I don't know if this is something to really change and kind of mess around with, because yeah, it is a little bit annoying that the Vikings are going to have to play on the road, because I'm sure they feel like they're better than the Rams, that they're better than the Buccaneers or things like that, right? But I mean, you're not always going to get two teams in the same division having 14 plus wins, right? This has been a pretty much an anomaly kind of season, right? The way that it kind of played out. It'd be great if they were always, competitive like this, right? But it always feels like one team's going to be done wrong, right, in a sense, right? Because they don't get a home playoff game based on all the hard work they did to get 13, 14 wins, right? So that's a little bit of a downside of it, but also Amon-Ra said too that they're great on the road, and really to just kind of tie it up in this kind of final statement, right? He said that they're great on the road, so honestly, if you've won 14 games throughout this season, and in the Lions' case, if you're undefeated on the road as well, you're going to be okay as a wild card team, right? Honestly, like, what are we talking about? We're talking about a 14-win team in that same breath, where I just kind of laid out everything in their favor to kind of change it. If you're a 14-win team and you have to play on the road, yes, it's not ideal. Yes, you want a home playoff game, right? Obviously, but if you won that many games and you got to play a few road games, 3 of them to kind of get to the Super Bowl, it's not the end of the world, right? You won 14 games. You think you could win 3 of them to get to the Super Bowl. Again, it's not ideal, but we're not talking about like a 10-win, 9-win team that has to play on the road, right? That's a little unlikely. But if you won 14 games, you could win 3 on the road and get to the Super Bowl, right? If not, then you're kind of like a fraudulent team in that sense, right? In my opinion. So both of these teams are going to be all right in my opinion. It is a little bit dicey though in that same breath, because you're playing the Rams on the road if you're the Vikings and you already lost there. But again, they're more than good enough to beat the Rams. They've proven it throughout the entire season. They're a 14-win team for a reason. They should be able to go out there and have all the confidence in the world to beat maybe the Rams, beat Detroit again on the road if they have to, and then maybe beat the Eagles on the road if they have to. They're capable of doing that. They have the talent. They have the resume to do it. We'll see if they could actually go out and perform like they can this upcoming weekend. So that's still a long ways away. We got the whole week to talk about other things, but for right now, I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's show. We're back to the regular scheduling, the every weekday live shows, and then obviously none on the weekends. So thank you guys again for joining me. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the Chip Shot Football Podcast, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. And if you want to see more of the Chip Shot Football Podcast, check out both YouTube channels, the Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel, for more content around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host, talking about all the games, breaking them down, talking about all the latest news in and around the NFL as well. All of that is up on YouTube for you guys to go enjoy. But for right now, we're going to sign off, and we'll be back again tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for some more discussion and fallout from the playoffs, as well as looking ahead to the weekend.
Mm-hmm. 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 Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to